Today on the Talent Current, we are starting our first episode of a mini series collaboration between Root Edge and RISE. Root Edge is a boutique energy and infrastructure recruitment agency, and RISE, Women of Renewable Industries and Sustainable Energy, is a nonprofit that's dedicated to supporting women and diversity in renewable energy. Root Edge and RISE partnered in 2025 on a salary and sentiment survey, and this mini series is a platform for us to unpack some of the insights of the report from the survey and what that means for you as an individual, you as a hiring manager, and you as a decision maker within our industry. Co-hosting this series with me from RISE today is the Executive Director, Doseke Akporiaye, and the Board President, Constance Thompson. Doseke and Constance, thank you both so much for joining me today on the Talent Current and for collaborating with me on this mini-series with RISE.
Thank you, Mindy, for having us. It's a pleasure to be here and excited to continue our partnership with you.
To start us off, Doseke, why don't you talk to us or share with us a bit about why RISE is interested in this survey and why this workforce data is important to us in our industry right now?
Thanks again, Mindy. And it's really important that this is happening at this time in our industry where there are lots of headwinds, but there are also lots of opportunities. And this podcast it's yet another infrastructure platform for RISE. At RISE, we are building and we have the infrastructure to ensure that stakeholders and partners can leverage on the infrastructure we build to continue the leadership pipeline, for the organizations and for the industry. And so this platform is just another infrastructure platform for RISE to enable us further our mission to ensure that we're providing leaders in the industry that support at large to deliver on their respective mandates and goals, but also to build that leadership infrastructure that we need in the industry. And this is important because if we don't do this, we're going to recreate or continue with an industry that we met, and we need to change that profile. So it's very exciting for us to introduce our first salary survey, the report. This is important to us because it's another critical component of our strategic plan, which is data leadership. How do we support leaders in the industry so that they can have the data, the thought leadership that they need to build the right systems, to build the right structures and policies that will ensure that they not only retain talent within the industry, but they develop that talent and that talent thrives. And this is very important for our community of women and diverse genders as well. How are we building the next generation of leaders within the industry? The profile of people that are coming into the industry are different. Their needs, their motivations, they're different. And so, as part of a talent retention strategy, a talent attraction strategy, organizations and leaders need to be able to look at, how do we interact with, how do we engage, how do we ensure that we're building the right environment, enabling environment for these diverse talents to thrive. Now, if we look at workforce data, it's critical for the industry because you need to make informed decisions around talent supply, skill gaps, workforce planning, all these critical components that we need to scale the energy transition. So having that workforce data is critical. And so this salary survey is a first step, something that we're looking at building on. We have a baseline information on workforce data, on sentiments within the industry, professional development. So this is the first step, and we want to be able to use this as baseline data to continue to get more information about what it takes to build an engaged energy workforce within the industry. You want to be able to align your hiring, your talent, your capital deployment with the market demand so that you ensure that your projects are delivered not just efficiently but sustainably. And so this is why we are doing this. This is why we have done it. This is why we are excited about it. And we look forward to building more robust, workforce data that would also include equity, inclusion, diversity, so that we really begin to pay attention on one of the most important aspects of assets that we have within organizations.
Thank you. Yes, I can attest that this is information that people ask for daily, and I'm sure you two can attest to that too. That anecdotally, the people that we meet with in the industry want to know where their value is and how they can ask for that value back. And then companies the same want to understand what their competitors are doing and how to stay competitive in the market. Constance, I'd love to hear from you about why we're doing this now.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's an interesting question, Mindy, and I'm about to tell you something really true. Is that when we did this, the second I had a conversation, is this the right time to do it? Because at the time, last year, late 2025, we were having many members of our community being laid off. We had company leaders coming to us, particularly during the leadership forum, allies saying, what do I do? You know, the industry's not looking that great now. I'm talking about salary, but it wasn't just about salary. It was about retention. You need to retain those women and those of diverse genders that you have now. You need to start creating a culture so that, you know, when things do bounce back, or also to retain the people you have, that you're able to develop them. And salary is one piece of it. It provided, and this research provides an entryway for us to begin talking about talent is not just about pay. It's about culture. It's about the experience they have with the organization, and it's about stabilizing the industry. Now, we've had members and allies and people within our community that have since then either pivoted to other career opportunities or have really started to take this time to focus on their organizational cultures, to focus on, okay, how do we really demonstrate that women and those of diverse genders matter to us? And we recognize that this is just a period for us in the industry. We're going to bounce back. Clean energy isn't going anywhere. We're just kind of pivoting a little bit. So right now, and like I said, I asked this, you know, we had this discussion. Oh my God, should we be doing a salary survey at this point in time? But after last year's leadership forum, it was very clear from allies and our members and those in, you know, outside of the peripheral of our organization, this was necessary because it opened the door to not only talking about equity and salary at this point in time, but it was talking about organizational culture. It was talking about how do you fortify your company in this industry at this particular time. So that's why we at WRISE, we love our members and our allies. So that's focused there. But we view this as something long term that's going to help the industry sustain itself, but also open the door to having discussions about what some of the research shown from this report in regards to organizational culture, in regards to what real leadership is in the industry. So that's why. That's why now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We've had these conversations a couple times in different contexts that actually you could argue that now is more important. It's now a more important time than ever to have this conversation. And for anyone who's been in the industry for the last 5 or 10 years, you've likely gone through some, we'll call them ebbs and flows and evolutions in the industry. You know, feast or famine. And
I heard a new one yesterday, Mindy. It's called Solar Coaster, right?
Yes, of course, the solar coaster.
Yeah.
So this is a good opportunity to also mention that this is an ongoing project that we're going to be doing together, WRISE and Root Edge, because the industry and industries evolve so much. And then that way we can start to piece together a much bigger story. So
Absolutely.
I think that's what's, you know, I think we should always be doing this is probably the answer. And because everybody wants to know if they are being paid equitable wages, what other companies are doing out there so that they can look out for themselves.
Absolutely. So, and I think once they view the data, Mindy, they're going to be even more hungry for it, you know, for that. So I'm very interested in having you share, like, what does some of the data say? What do we learn?
Yeah.
What do we learn?
Yeah, that's a good question. And this is such a good opportunity to jump into some of the more micro data, because there's so much that we can get out of this report. But today, because we don't want to overwhelm with all of the information at once, we're going to talk more about the pay gap, the gender pay gap across different levels that we were able to get from our report. And more specifically, our data indicates anywhere from 7.5% up to 18% difference in pay between men and women. And just to be clear, women are being paid 7.5 to 18% less than men, depending on where they sit in level. And actually, the biggest pay gap is at that manager level at 18%. So I was actually really shocked to see this. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I thought we had made more progress as an industry. So when you two see this, how does that make you feel? And what do you think that means for our industry?
So I mean, it's it's not surprising, but it's also just a bit disheartening, because you think that so much work, so much awareness has gone into showing the value of having diverse teams, how that directly impacts the bottom line. And it's not a lack of knowing this data, and so you begin to ask yourself the question: if you know, why aren't you implementing it? um, but it coincides with what we're hearing from our community. About 50% of male and female genders come into the workforce. But as they progress within the organizations and the industry, they drop off. And especially with the wage gap you mentioned, at that manager level, that is a critical inflection point where we see a lot of women dropping off, because of not just pay, but because they are putting in so much work into their respective roles as managers of people, being, significantly being more empathic in most cases, which is not recognized as part of your job description, but which you do because that's how you build your teams. And the way women organize, it's different. But are not getting that same reward. I think it's very it's mind-boggling for me to understand, if we when we see this data, why companies and leaders are not doing more things. And I think this even makes a case for why we need to do this survey on an ongoing basis, why we need to generate this reports that encompasses multiple aspects. Because even from the survey, we see that at least 12% of respondents will make a career move just by representation in leadership. So when they see someone that looks like themselves or someone that they identify with in leadership position, and at least 32% of the respondents, will make a change to a more diverse. They want more diverse leadership and decision makers throughout the industry. So it's disheartening, but I think it's an opportunity for us to educate. It's an opportunity for us to influence leaders. What we did with this report was that we made the summary available to everyone within our community, and it's on our website, so that at least first of all they're more equipped in negotiations. But the next step will be to continue to educate and influence those leaders, so that they advocate for equal pay within their respective organizations, in how they structure their compensations, in how they develop their reward and incentive packages. So that will be my immediate reaction. It's a no-brainer to have these equal pay within your organizations, but just again highlighting that there's still more work to be done. We need to continue to educate, we need to continue to make aware, and we need to continue to make leaders within the organization understand that they need to build fairer systems, reward and retention systems within the organizations.
I want to pull on that string that Doseke is sharing, because what she's fundamentally referring to is something that I've been doing diversity, equity, inclusion work. Now I just call it equity work for over 20 years. And one of the things that really moves the needle is when you start looking at those systemic infrastructures. Anything that you're doing to increase equity, increase representation, increase anything that sustainably moves the needle in an industry, it has to be systemic. And one of the things that immediately came out of this when I read the report, and in addition to the summary of the report, was wow, this is a systemic move now. We're really making real change, because it's now getting at the systemic aspects of how organizations, how companies, how we as an industry are talking about compensation, how we are even being a little bit more transparent in how we talk about conversation, but most importantly, how the women and those of diverse genders are demanding it. The data pointed to that clearly to me, like, wow, if we're not responsive to this, there will not be an industry. And I tell our members and our allies, our partners, and those who kind of ask, well, why does RISE do what we do? And I say it's because women run this joint. Women created this industry. Women, when you look at our members, many of them are at the inflection point of creating the financial infrastructure of this industry, moving the policy leads that need to happen in this industry, but most importantly, doing the work that gets the things done that deliver the solutions that we deliver. So to me, I was like, wow, this is happening systemically. Somebody's waking up here. The second thing was how culture and representation, and I don't just mean the representation of women, I mean the representation of women in strategic places in the organization is becoming more important. One thing about the clean energy industry is that the way we frame roles is different than in other industries. Even individuals who are in the more, I would say, the oil and gas space, which has dominated for some time now. Thank God it's not doing as much now, right? Even the way they talk about a role of somebody doing financial related work is different. Women who do financial work in our industry, they are more encompassing of the entire operations. You see all the small companies that have just led this organization, who are actually going to be a part of bringing back up this industry. I don't care what anybody says about that. They are looking at culture differently. They're looking at how they define leadership differently. They're looking at their boards differently. They're looking at their investors differently here. So once again, systemic, it's more about culture. And then last but not least, we are at a real inflection point on how we define workforce in this industry. And this report highlights that. So while we are growing, we are transforming, but we are really getting at the foundation of systemically how organizations are built, how we advance people, how we bring them in, how we retain them, but most importantly, how women are talking about it. We're talking about it. Women and people of diversity, we're talking about it. We're demanding transparency. So those were some of the things that, pointing to what Doseke was saying about these systemic changes, that I think this report highlights and points to why and points to the future of this industry.
Just building on that, I wanted to talk a bit more about the professional development aspect, because one thing, like Constance has said, is because we're almost like a startup industry, the skill sets you require in a startup environment gives you broad skill sets. And so a lot of the women and a lot of the talented industry have had to develop such broad skill sets that they have such significant transferable skills. And I think one of the biggest gaps, when I think of the assets of the skill sets that women have, they're not advocating for themselves in terms of even professional development and positioning. I think that report also highlights that gap and that need for women and diverse genders to really own the asset that they have in the depth of skills that they have within industry. I mean, when the industry was starting, and even now, you will find that people in this industry have had to learn very quickly and have had to deliver on it. So there's such rich skill sets within the industry. And because it's sort of like a startup mode, we've had to learn so many different things and move and shift to so many different functions quickly. We're not owning this as an asset. We're not advocating for ourselves and highlighting this as an asset and even using it as a platform for professional development. So that's something that from that report I got from women, not even advocating for the skill sets that they have already, that they're boss ladies, but also just saying, hey, I have this and I want to move on into this particular area because I have these transferable skills. I know I can do it. So that's something that came out from there, and I wanted to also just highlight that.
Yes. Actually, I want to highlight that further with some of the data from the report. So 71% of our respondents said that they don't have a professional development plan in place. 71%.
Wow.
And then 77% of our respondents said they wanted to grow in their career and seek that next level. So just again, to underline your point, there is so much ambition in this industry. People want to grow, they want to be developed, they're asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And everything you just said about our industry is so true. And what makes it really incredible is that how far we've been able to come
Mm-hmm.
as an industry, just bootstrapping it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Very entrepreneurial. Everyone's doing a little bit of everything. People are taking on leadership roles before they've ever been developed into them. And they're just going and doing because they're passionate about the energy transition.
Mm-hmm.
And now what I see in this report is that the industry has reached a level of maturity where we need to start putting this framework in place to develop the amazing talent that we know that we have in the industry. To your point, Doseke, really support the people who aren't advocating for themselves with the tools and the resources to start going out and asking for these resources and start asking for these plans.
Yeah. And even just talking about ambition, you know, the typical woman would, I'm ambitious, I want to grow. Um, and would feel they need to develop themselves up to 90% before they can be ready, right, to step into a growth mode. I'm like, but you're ready. What you have is probably already 120% just by doing the work that you do and getting things done and figuring things out yourself and taking on the challenge, because typically women are just, they feel they have to prove themselves far more than they need to be at the table and to show up in the room. So, yes, there's ambition, but you already have so much going for you. Step into that room, step into that role, advocate for yourself. You don't have to have 100% to fulfill that role, right? That's why there are development opportunities. And I think what I'm hoping this report will show is to just even look at the skill sets that they have, the transferable skill sets that they have, that justifies why they should be leading, and they are leading, in those different roles within the industry.
Mindy, it's interesting, as Doseke was talking, I was thinking about as I travel to talk to members in chapters or speak to members that are affiliated with certain companies or our leadership forum or other events we have. I'll just say the beauty of RISE and our members and our allies is that these are the discussions that I've had in those spaces. So when Doseke talks about women saying, oh, I didn't realize that was an opportunity. I didn't realize that's all you did in your role. Not, saying that the role that the person at the C-suite level has is not important, but they're like, I can do that. That's what RISE does. That's what our ecosystem, our community, our allies do. They shed light on the reality of things. Yeah, this is what I do. This is my background. They're like, what? I thought I needed more. And it creates this ecosystem of transparent communications that empowers them beyond the position description, beyond what's happening in their world. And employers should be afraid of that. They should be very afraid of people, of women and those of diverse gender identities finding out you're not telling me everything. You're not being transparent about what it takes to get this role. You have a structured advancement pathway, but I'm finding out it's not true. I'm finding out those systemic things that you do have in place to show advancement in an organization, to show sponsorship in an organization, to show that you're investing in salaries and opportunities. They're not true. And so something that I hope our members and our allies come out of this with is like, wow, let me litmus test my advancement pathways that are in place. Not that they don't have them, but are they true? Are they transparent? Are they empowering? And the question is, will somebody that I value in my organization go somewhere like RISE, to a conference, to a gathering, to a meeting, and find out I'm not true? The other piece, and these are all systemic interventions. The other thing is that the visibility of women. I don't always buy into, based upon conversations with our members and my background, that women are not saying, are not advocating for themselves or sponsoring one another. I am of the opinion that the transparency around what it takes to get on boards, the transparency around what it takes to get in these leadership roles or to lead certain projects, once again, is systemically not transparent in those spaces. And when we talk about diversity, I'm so tired of hearing people talk about diversity because it's something to hide behind. We talking about equity. We're talking about inclusion. And if you're unsure what that means, we have a lot of information on our website about that. I'm not going to define that for you. I'm going to let you take that in and define it for yourself and act upon it, which is really the goal. But when we're talking about equity, and we're talking about it as a strategic priority in your organization. So where are women in your organizations? How do you communicate systemically what it takes to get to a certain level, or what those opportunities are, or how do you get sponsored to get there? And I think this report, our members are not just going to look at it for, oh, that's what people are making. They're going to look at it as, oh, this is what I should be advocating for. I should be pushing for in my organization. And if they don't have it, guess what? I'm going to vote with my feet. So I think something that comes out of this will come out of this report, I hope, for our members and allies, is just that: the systemic pathways for advancement, litmus testing it, ensuring that, that there's representation in decision making. Spaces for individuals in the organization, and being more transparent about that. And last but not least, stop talking about diversity, start talking about equity and inclusion, and making it a strategic priority for your organization. And our members, women, those of diverse gender identities, and our allies can see, oh, I need to do more. I think this report is going to do that for our members.
Okay, so there's so many directions that I want to take this, but I think for a lot of the people, like our audience, knows this. I want to speak to the people who don't know this, who maybe don't understand equity and inclusion and the impact that it has on your systems, the impact that it has on retention, and then ultimately, Doseke, what you said earlier, the impact that it has on your bottom line. So these are all really important concepts, but they're pretty big. So if we want someone to understand who maybe doesn't understand, or thinks that they understand, what does it actually mean for the bottom line? What does it actually mean for our systems and retention and development, et cetera? I want to drill down into that. And maybe we start with the revenue piece. Like if women are paid 18% less at the manager level, which we could argue is the most critical inflection point of someone's career, like you said earlier, Doseke, and they see that, or they feel that, or they just know it in their bones, what does that mean? How does that impact your bottom line? I think this is an important point to go through.
I mean, that's very important and very interesting, observation. The manager level is like the clearinghouse of most organizations. That's where a lot of the work gets done. And so I want you to imagine that you're right in the middle of a project or trying to close a transaction, and the key drivers of that transactions leave, right? One is going to cost you more. The amount of, if you have to get more senior people, the cost of that project is going to go up, right? If you don't find people, if you don't have those people, the delay in the project is gonna occur. The delay in the project has cost implications in terms of delivering on time, and in terms of meeting either financial, deadlines or that you have there. So ultimately, it will cost you more as an organization to deliver your projects. It will cost you more as an organization to provide the service that you provide. If you have to get people right in the middle of your project, and the cost of retaining someone, it's always cheaper than the cost of hiring. Again, like I said, we know these things, and it doesn't make sense that you would want to incur additional costs to make your projects less competitive, to make your service less competitive. And maybe there's a disconnect in how we're communicating this. I'm hoping that from this project we will continue to educate, use this podcast and all our different platforms to educate decision makers, to create awareness for industry leaders, to make them more cognizant of the implication of these decisions that they're taking, to let people go versus ensuring that they are stay within the organization. It's going to cost them more. That increment cost of the organization, if it's someone within the organization, maybe 10% increment to make them happy to stay. Looking at more inclusive reward and retention packages or strategies. So it costs the organization less. And I think sometimes we don't associate the dollar amount cost for these situations or this loss of talent And we need to bring that to the fore. That those are probably improvements we can make in this report to really highlight the dollar amount versus, the cause or the implication, and really try to track that, by working with organizations so that they see the dollar amount, and hopefully they'll make better decisions with regards to keeping vessels hiring new.
Absolutely. It's cheaper to keep them.
Mhm.
Paraphrasing an old blues song, it's cheaper to keep them in the organization, full stop. But I think the thing that if we could leverage this report and like 3 times on it, right? Double down 3 times on this report, it is that even the perception
Mhm.
of equity inequity is expensive. And I don't care what you're talking about, the product that you produce, the people that you have in your organization, even the perception of inequity is important. And I'm going to tell you, the people that I often talk to, that I have to partner with, but also that are the most vocal, are these operations HR people.
Mhm.
They will tell you in a minute when the change in perception of the company happens, people start to ask more questions about equity. People start to ask more questions about pay. And they even start to ask more questions about, okay, we know their pay gaps. Where are they?
Mhm.
All that is expensive.
Mhm.
So let's just say an organization says, you know what? Roles have changed, responsibilities have changed. So we're going to go ahead and do kind of like this compensation study where we're actually internally going to look at where the gaps are, right? And they come out and they say, oh my gosh, it's almost $10,000. And we got about 20 employees who fall under that. So that's about $200,000 right there, right?
Mhm.
But then let's just talk about the perception of people who aren't even in the roles that they found a gap in. So it becomes this question for the organization of, oh my gosh, do we fix this in advance by listening to studies like this compensation study, by actually doing the rigorous work every year of doing just a review of pay in the organization, compensation and advancement? Or do we just wait until we $600,000 in the hole?
Mhm.
It's math, in my opinion. You gonna pay now, or you gonna pay later? Or you gonna
Yep.
invest in those systemic interventions that make sure that this doesn't happen along the way? So I'd like companies to start. This is another investment.
Mhm.
This is just an invest in those systemic things that you do pay equity studies. You do study.
Mhm.
You subscribe. Even and I am very torn on this because I've worked for and I have competed with several organizations that do these studies like best place to work and so forth. I think if you do it as a systemic investment to make sure, because in those studies they say, oh, your compensation is not here. Your employees are thinking about advancement this way. Your reputation is this. Your perceived and actual representation is this. And invest in those things so that you don't have to deal with these things in the end.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry, I'm gonna give you $50,000 for this study. I'm gonna
Mhm.
go ahead and give you $50,000 to say I'm the best place to work, but you best believe I want that data out of it, and you best believe I want to be held accountable for leveraging that data because I'm
Mhm.
not trying to spend $600,000 I don't really have on
Mhm.
interventions. I'd rather use that to complement my employees to be able to advance something that advances the entire company. So my answer to that is that this is just an investment,
Mhm.
but it's something that you do systemically. You do it along the way. And I'm sorry, it's math. It's
Mhm.
math. It's simple math.
Yeah, I would like to get your opinion, Mindy, on you know because there's like Constance mentioned, just even that perception of inequity,
Mhm.
right? I know that there's some organizations, some people don't want to work there,
Mhm.
right? Because of
Mhm.
the perception of inequity,
Mhm.
because of the perception of not being having inclusive systems, or because people don't see themselves. And
Mhm.
it'd be interesting to hear from your viewpoint as a recruiter, when you look at the numbers in terms of how you're placing people, the cost of placing those people, the cost of getting someone to say yes. It'll be interesting to hear what you have to say about that. And I wanted to also say something about what Constance is saying, which is, I run an organization, so I know that is you have to manage competing resources. But one
Mhm.
thing I've learned that is critical is just being transparent and honest. So yes, you may not have the 600,000 or the 200,000 to normalize or to harmonize compensation across board. But you should have a plan, a systemic plan, a cost correcting strategy for the systemic problem that you have,
Mm-hmm.
and communicate and be transparent with your people to say, hey, we recognize that there's a problem in our system. This is how we plan to fix it. And these are the stages. Hold us accountable to this plan versus holding us accountable to, we're not at par with the industry, or it's inequitable right now. So I wanted to also bring that up as well, and I would love to hear from Mindy in terms of placing people in companies that people don't want to work in companies that people have a perception of not being equitable, organizations. What are you seeing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I want to answer that question. And before I do, I want to make one comment,
Sure.
one observation about the cost of replacing people. So just to hire or onboard a new employee, it costs companies, depending on the size of the organization and the individual, where they're located, et cetera, could be anywhere from, on the low end, $25,000 up to $50,000. And that's not including if you're using a third-party recruiter like myself.
Mhm.
Third-party recruiters do cost a premium, so that could cost you an additional $20,000 to $60,000 plus, depending again on the level of the individual.
And
So it
there's a
is
reason for that,
very,
Mindy, because you all do that work for them that they should be doing. You
Yeah.
do those salary negotiations. You do some of the research to prepare them to recruit the person they want.
so, and the effort that it takes to recruit and sell the individual to leave their current organization. And you are playing a risk adjustment. That's why people tend to want additional or higher salaries when they move from one employer to the
Mm-hmm.
next.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why I want to share this number is for a couple reasons. One, if you are an employee and you are hesitating to have these conversations about development and or promotion or both,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to feel empowered that you are a valuable employee, and it costs more to replace you than to keep you and give you a raise. It doesn't mean you're going to be guaranteed a raise, but it can help you to have that conversation if you feel that you are paid inequitably.
Mm-hmm.
And the second reason that I say that is to underpin the point that it is very costly to lose employees and to replace them. Okay, to answer your question, Doseke, what is the cost to future employers if they don't have diverse teams, is kind of the way that I'm understanding your question. And what have I seen in the market? I've seen this so much, and I've seen both sides, people on teams where they feel like the only woman, or they are the only woman on the team, and they don't have any female leaders to look up to, so they can't see themselves in these positions, will want to leave that team because they want female leadership. They want to see themselves, and they want to feel seen as they're going through their career, and they feel more comfortable asking for help in these situations or getting the development they need. So a lot of people will seek new opportunities because they don't see themselves in the leadership within their organizations.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side, when people are on the market or open to considering new opportunities, the same thing happens. If they are interviewing with an all-male team, they want to understand why that's the case. Why do they not see any diversity on that team? Does that mean that they don't support diversity? Does that mean that they are only looking to hire you because you are a diverse hire? You're the token woman on the team. And again, they struggle to see themselves in that leadership, someone to follow. So it goes both ways. People will absolutely leave organizations and not join new teams because there is a lack of diversity.
Wow.
I want to push back a little bit on that, right? And I'm going to push back because, in talking to RISE members, and I think some of that I need to see it to be it. I don't meet a lot of RISE members who care about seeing it to be it. I meet a lot of RISE members who are about, I need to see that it's real. I need to see that you value me, because guess what? I'm out here making lots of money for your company. I'm out here leading major projects. I'm out here talking about how this industry is the solution to a lot of the problems that this rock we all live on solves. And what they're saying is, make it a little bit easier for me. If you value me, you give me a suggested development plan. You show me you want me to have a plan. And they're like, if you value me, I know I value myself. If you value me, you ain't got to show me another woman. You got to show me you value me. And so a lot of these women are also products of men. And I hear a lot of stories from RISE members, who happen to be women of color or from other cultures or, another industry. It was a white man who for some reason looked at me and said, I know you're the only one in here. So one, I need you to know I see you. But two, I need you to know that I got a few cheat codes I'd like to share with you. Will you allow me to share those cheat codes? So I agree, Mindy, that there are someone who they need to see it. But what I hear more from RISE members is, I don't need to see it. I need to see you value me. And if I'm working so hard, you see me working so hard, you come to me with a plan. What's your plan for me? Because I will leave, or I know who I am and how valuable I am. So I just wanted to offer a point and counterpoint to that. But what I agree about, that I heard an undertone of you saying, is you will pay more by working with me as Mindy. You're going to get a great talent and so forth, because people will come to me that won't come to you because they're testing you through me. They are testing if you're a good employer. They are testing how you treat people. And the recruiters already told me how much I'm worth. So how much you think I'm worth? So they will leverage a great recruiter, a great headhunter, a great consultant, just to get to you. So it's going to get more expensive unless you wake up and realize, and I'm not saying I'm trying to put you out of business, Mindy, I'm not trying to put you out of business, but I'm trying to say that we're not dumb anymore. We know, you're going to talk to a headhunter differently than me because you invested in them. And they're going to tell me the truth. So, Annie up.
Yeah.
Get Annie up. So I just wanted to offer that in appreciation and support for what you're saying, but also be real with what I'm hearing from RISE members. Our RISE members ain't the wallflowers that people think they are. These women and people of diverse genders in the clean energy industry, they done fought enough just to get the work done. They're not going to fight with you over your value of them. They're just not.
What Constance is saying is critical. And yes, if I'm in there, you either value me, right? Or, I will go somewhere where I'm valued. So that is a recurring theme that we hear from our community and women in general. But to even get in the first place, you don't know, right? And not all recruiters are like you, Mindy, right? There's some recruiters just want to get their pay, right? So they're not going to tell you anything that is going to prevent them from getting the job done. Right?
I wrote a post about this literally this week. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay.
So sometimes, you have to look at the nuances and say, how do I figure out if this is the right place for me? Because the recruiter is going to tell me what they need to tell me to close the transaction. I may not have the opportunity to talk to someone within the organization, right? I may not have access. But, how do I make this decision? And like what you're saying, it's looking at the people that are there. It's looking at the whether women are even there, whether women are in the leadership position before going into such places. And there's a cost. I think that's what I wanted to highlight, that the fact that people don't see themselves, they're not close enough to the organization, don't have access to people, or people will not tell them the real deal before they go in. They have to make a judgment based on the limited information that they have. And if that perception is that you are not the right environment, then there's a cost. So if you have if there's a perception of you as a place not to work, I dare say that amount of money will increase, because you would have to offer a heck of a lot more to convince someone, I'm going to take whatever comes from here because the pay is just too good. And I think that's what that companies need to understand, in that perception, like Constance said, your brand, your image, your equity brand as an organization is valuable, and it will cost you. Either it will cost you to hire the right talent because it's your brand index is not as high, or it will allow you attract new talent. I have changed jobs and taken a pay cut just because I wanted to work in certain environments. So if your equity brand index is favorable, you will attract talents that just want to work with you, work in that kind of environment, because they want to be in a place where they will feel valued, heard, and that they know that people will be actively working towards their progress and their growth within the industry. The
Okay.
other point I wanted to also highlight is that need to take a risk on someone. That is so important for talent within the industry. And this cuts across whether you're a woman or you're a man.
Yes.
Sometimes, you want some people just, they want the resume to be like, airtight. They want all the ducks to be in the roll, and it doesn't always happen. You don't always find out, that you're a diamond in the rough, right? So I think it's so critical that as part of that we find a way to build it into our selection process, into the system. How do we give people a chance? It could be through internships, it could be through fellowships, but how do we give them a leg in? It could be through sponsorship. It could be through, these are the elements that build the system that Constance is talking about. Um, yes, we want more representation of women in the industry, but the reality is the numbers shows that there are more men in executive positions. So what systems do we build around sponsorship, specifically for those male leaders and executives to sponsor women to come into the executive level, or to share their experiences, or to buddy with them? Those are the systems that we need to build, and one that RISE is working towards in terms of trying to determine, so what should an allyship or sponsorship model look like for the industry? This is something that is on our mind. This is something that we're exploring, so that as part of our pillar of data leadership, we can share with the industry, this is a blueprint. This
Mm-hmm.
is a template of what it takes, because we're seeing them coming, they're not staying. And by the time they get to the C-suite level, that number drops significantly from 50% at entry level to between 12 to 16% at C-suite level.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many different components, that we need to take in building this system, this structure, this systemic overhaul that needs to be done, that cuts
Mm-hmm.
across pay, that cuts across culture, that cuts across sponsorship, that cuts across fellowships and internships, but so many different components to ensure that people don't just come in, they stay. They don't stay because they don't have options. They stay because they want to stay and that they're thriving.
Mm.
Um, and I think that is so critical.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Quadruple down on that, Doseke. When you were talking, I was like, if we were having a conversation about those that identify as male,
Mhm,
and these were the urgent points, this wouldn't be an issue anymore.
mhm,
It wouldn't be
Mhm.
an issue anymore if we was talking about those that identify as
mhm.
male. But I also want to, and you all may not be able to do this, but as the board president, I can do this. This is why RISE matters. Women, those are diverse gender identities, enter RISE, and they say all this to us.
Mhm.
They amplify what we do. They amplify an ecosystem that shares. It's almost like you sending out a red alert with talking points
Mhm.
once our members and allies find out about information like this. But most importantly, the reason that we are starting with Root Edge and this compensation report is, as Doseke said, we are realizing that the data is power. And for
Mm.
us as an industry and as an organization to have a level of credibility, we need people to be proximate to us so that we can share with them what we've learned and not blame them, but work with them to
Mhm.
empower them, inspire them to put in these systemic infrastructures that are hurting our industry,
Mhm.
if you
Mhm.
will. It's going to get to a point where women and those of diverse genders are like, I ain't hurt. I'm just aware, and you're not exactly where I want to be aware with. I don't want to contribute to your organization or even this industry at this point. But Rise is saying at this juncture, we can help. We
Mhm.
have tactics, resources, systemic programs
Infrastructure.
and infrastructure that we can introduce you to. We can consult with you with
Mhm.
that can help with this. This does not have to be happening, and your
Mhm.
proximity to Rise and your allyship and your engagement with RISE is going to get you 10 times further than you doing this
Mhm.
alone. Ain't no shame in it.
Mhm.
Let's do it. Let's get it
Mhm.
done. There's a whole industry. There's a whole rock, a planet, depending on us to get this right. And that's
Mm.
why RISE matters in this, and RISE wants to rise. in this.
Mhm.
So no blame. Let's get to work.
Rise has the infrastructure. We're not just an event or a conference, organization. We have the infrastructure. We have the 50
Yes.
chapters across the country where there are boots on the ground that are looking at locally. How do we curate the kind of experiences you need to thrive? How do we create the kind of programs that you need, that the people in that locality need, the support that the people in that locality need? We have the mentorship program. We convene cohorts of 250 or to 300. We do it once a year. Now we're trying to increase it to twice a year, where we are pairing people for a 6 months curriculum, free to Rise members. So being a part of Rise, we're an extension of your business strategy. We're an extension of your talent acquisition and retention strategy. We have built the infrastructure. We will continue to enhance that infrastructure, so you don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to get feedback from 100 companies to take a decision. You just plug into Rise and you have access to that data. You have access to that network. You have access to people from multiple organizations that are learning, that are sharing, and are trying to improve the outcomes that we have in the clean energy industry. And we have fellowships to get people to get a taste of the industry, to get the next generation. We're all doing all we're doing. Very few people are thinking about what about the next generation? Who's going to take
Mm.
over? How do we get them ready? They're leaders in their own rights, and they do things differently, I tell you, right?
Yes.
So
This is
how do we get them ready? How do we develop them? And as an organization, you're not going to have all the resources to do that. But investing in Rise, partnering with Rise, means that we can pull those resources together and make sure we have these multiple leadership pipelines for all levels: next gen, mid career, E-suite, what we call E-suite, emerging leaders, and C-suite, to really grow this industry, that they develop themselves personally, professionally, but more importantly, that we're all working towards leaving a legacy,
Mhm.
because we met this industry, right? We're going to do our part. But what's important is, what is the legacy we're all going to leave? And it goes beyond competition. It goes beyond trying to outdo each other. That was not the mindset that got us to where we are. And
No.
so we need to press that reset button and begin to say to ourselves, we're far gone, than when we started. What are we going to leave behind? And what we can leave behind, like Constance is saying, is that systemic structure for them to build on, making sure the next generation are excited to want to join the industry, because right now they're not. They're not.
Mm.
The headwinds are a lot, right? So
Mhm.
how do we make sure? It means we need to pivot in terms of the reward and incentive structures that we have within our organizations. We almost need to have multiple pathways for these leadership levels to be able to attract, engage, and retain them in the industry. And that takes a shift in the mindset of how to build structure, of how to build systemic infrastructure, because you're no longer doing it for, I have this employee, they fit into this box. You now have clear demographics with different, unique expectations. And you have to say to yourself, how do I build an organization that enhances, embraces all these different demographics and their needs, and constantly delivers value to them?
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yes. And allies, Doseke, I just want to add allies. Um, uh, Mindy, I want to thank you, because what you are doing and partnering with us and what this report does is tell the truth.
Mhm.
And there's something, it could be just a responsibility. We kind of built this accountability with our members, but they expect us to tell the truth.
Yep.
And they tell on us when we don't tell the truth. And they tell us to our face we ain't telling the truth. So what you are doing is allowing us to start talking about the truth,
Mhm.
and truth leading to action by
Mm.
partnering here. And in future episodes, um, I want you to hold us accountable to that,
Mm.
to continue to tell the truth, and to tell the truth in a way that we're not only saying, okay, this ain't true, but this is true, but this is the action with it, so that we
Mhm.
can have impact. And on
Mm.
behalf of the RISE Board of Directors, I want to thank you for that, because that's
Mm.
one thing RISE is known for, the truth. And in
Mhm.
2025, we got a lot of things that we were told to choose by our members on, and we had to answer to. And we're
Yes.
not perfect, but we're working on these issues.
We listen. We
Right, we
listen
listen. Yeah,
and we take feedback and execute on it.
absolutely there. But what you are doing is allowing women and those of diverse genders to tell their truth, to share with them factual truth, but also to say to them, okay, so the truth is here. Here's the truth to action. And I want to thank you for that. And I want to encourage you to continue to do that. And I'm looking forward in our future episodes. This is our first episode of a podcast that is RISE in partnership with an organization, not RISE supporting another organization, although we are.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful thing. And it's
Yeah.
all, the foundation is truth and truth to action. And I want to thank you for that. Know that, and looking forward to future sessions grounded in truth and action.
Yes.
So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And I want to share my truth because I think, look, you two work for RISE, and everything you do, I can tell you're so passionate about, and you want everyone to understand the value that you bring, and how much RISE can do for your sponsor organizations and for your network and community that you've built. And I am in that network. I am in that community as a RISE member. And Doseke, you said a couple minutes ago that there are people that will leave their current positions for lower pay because they don't feel seen, because they don't feel recognized, because they don't feel there are the right development programs in place, or whatever the case may be, right? If I've learned anything in my 20-year almost career in recruitment, it's that our careers are multidimensional, and the reason that we consider our career moves are multidimensional. And I can share with you that just over a year and a half ago, when I left my last organization, that's exactly what happened to me. I left for about 15% less pay to do something different because I didn't see a future for myself at that organization anymore. But I don't think that feeling was mutual. I know the value that I brought to that organization from a revenue standpoint, from a leadership standpoint, from a female leader standpoint. And I left for something else because I did not feel appreciated, I didn't feel valued, and I didn't feel seen. And, moving forward in my career in 2025, very challenging year in my life, very amazing year in my life, because I took control of a lot of important parts and facets of my life. And one of those was co-founding Root Edge. And RISE was the support network that I didn't know I needed. And not just because, Doseke, you took a personal interest in what can I do for you? Every time I talk to you, what can I do for you, Mindy? And it's crazy because I know you do that for probably all of your members. I know that's not sustainable, and I don't want to offer that to everyone, but you did that for me. And when I went to the 20th anniversary gala last year, I think you knew every single person in that room and their story and impacted their lives. And that is what RISE does. It's not, yes, there are systems that you can offer support on. There are resources, there are programs that you all do, but you genuinely care about every single member. And I felt that personally. I have built a network and a community of friends through RISE that, in my very small business, I don't have access to. We're a small team, we're a small office. So this community gives me that camaraderie that I don't have access to in my small business. And it gives me business opportunities. I mean, just by virtue of being a member, I get more access. And I want to thank you. And I want to say that you practice what you preach. And I don't get compensated for saying these things. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. So I wanted to make sure that you all know how appreciative I am of you and what you do at RISE.
Yes. RISE is a movement, Mindy. And people sleep on it until they get engaged. RISE is a movement. Absolutely.
And what you put in, you get out.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we did not pay Mindy to do that. That was not a part of any of the discussions. That is truth to action here. That is truth to action here. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mindy, I want to just, from my perspective, and I think this compensation report and our continued work in this area is going to do this, but, The bottom line for me, why I engage with RISE, why I know many of our board members and our leaders do, many of our amazing WHQ team members do it, is that they want a resilient and sustainable future. Absolutely, they believe in the RISE movement, but also this future focused piece of it. And I believe that we have to be just as intentional about building people and leadership as we are about building projects and infrastructure. Once we balance that, we're going to be extra winning. We are going to win beyond our wildest dreams. So I wanted to share that as a foundational piece of why we do what we do and what we know the movement of RISE to be. And so glad you're a part of it.
Thank you so much, Mindy. Really glad you're part of it, and excited about version 2.0 of the salary survey report, which we're already working on. And as most people have heard, there's still so much work to be done, and it's going to take all of us. It's going to take me. It's going to take you. It's going to take RISE. It's going to take every organization that is mission aligned to wanting an inclusive energy transition. We need allies. We need partners. We need everyone to play their part, in making this happen. And we're looking forward to version 2.0 being more robust, having more data. We're looking to partner with industry researchers, organizations as well, because we really want to create something that will be useful for not just our members, not just the organizations in the industry, but also the industry at large. This helps us woo and keep the next generation of people that will continue the energy transition. And I'm looking forward to organizations, this being a reference point for organizations to use in their business strategy, in their strategy retreats, in their annual planning processes. And we need your support to be able to make sure that this continues to grow, becomes a more robust report, and have broader data sets as well.
Yes. And in wrapping up this episode, I want to welcome our audience and our community to feedback on our 2025 report and share any ideas or insights into what they would like to see in our 2.0 version that we will be running in 2026, because we want these reports to benefit our community, and we want these reports to benefit the industry on both sides, from, like I said, an individual as well as an employer decision maker side. So please engage with us, share feedback, and participate in our next version, because the more data that we can collect, the more that you can lean on this data as you go have these difficult conversations for yourself, either as a manager for your team or as someone advocating for yourself for your next promotion or your next PDP, whatever the case may be. So thank you to our community for engaging with us in 2025. And thank you for listening to this first episode in our mini series. And we are excited to host and record more episodes in the future. And we are also open to feedback on what you would like us to dive into from the 2025 salary survey.
Happy Women's History Month as well.
Indeed.
Right, thank you.
Thank you too.
Thank you.